So, a warm hello to all of you, and those of you who are writing your names in the chat, hello, it's nice to see your names, and those of you who are not, a warm hello, and it's wonderful to have this time together. And I find that this meditation practice, mindfulness practice, little bit of a miracle, or kind of a natural wonder, in that in its essence, it's very simple. And in some ways, the simpler you can make it be, the more wondrous it becomes, the more amazing and, well, maybe sometimes seemingly miraculous it becomes. And this art of learning to be aware, but be aware in radical simplicity. In a sense, just be aware. And not to add anything to it, not to build stories around it, or not hijack your awareness with desires and aversions. And of course we have stories and desires and aversions and stuff, but it isn't that we have to be free of those, but we include them in this radical simplicity of awareness. Rather, include them in the sense of knowing it, as opposed to having them somehow color, take over, influence how we're aware. So a radical simplicity. And some of you have been doing all these last 70 talks on mindfulness of breathing, and there was a lot of information, a lot of ideas, and now as we're coming to the end, I want to evoke the idea that there is a path through all these steps. And the ideal path, I think, is not to make much effort to do so, but just to rely on the radical simplicity of awareness. And then watch how these steps develop, watch how practice unfolds, but without any expectations or demands or efforts to make it so. And finally, this kind of a image that I've learned from Buddhist teachings that is very meaningful for me, for this simplicity, is the idea of taking a backward step, just stepping back and then watching and looking, stepping back. And how far do we have to step back in the mind so we can just observe, just be aware in the simplest possible way. And sometimes it's taking a step back and turning around 180 degrees and just looking at how we're aware and appreciating how simple it can be, just aware. In its essence, awareness is very simple. And as some of you have heard me do before, if I give the instructions for you to stop being aware, for many people, when they hear that, it's like then they can't turn it off, unless you distract yourself somehow. In fact, the instructions to stop being aware, for some people, heightens their awareness. It's kind of always there in some form, in the simplest possible form of it. Just here with this, maybe here with your breathing. So, entering into a meditation posture and maybe adjusting your posture some. Part of the adjustment is just a reminder that you'll be here now. Gently closing your eyes And then to take a few gentle, slow, long breaths, 3/4 full. As a movement towards being here in this body, simplifying yourself from all the concerns of the day, yesterday, and your life, just simply here in this body. Breathing in and in a long, gentle exhale. Relaxing at the end of the exhale. So maybe you release more. Longer exhale. And then letting your breathing return to normal. And as you exhale, to move through the body from the top to the bottom, settling yourself and relaxing as you do. And the exhale, relaxing the muscles of the face, around the eyes and the forehead, the jaws. On the exhale, relaxing the shoulders. Small adjustment in your hands where they are in position might free up the shoulders a little bit more. Softening the belly, releasing the belly. Softening and releasing the legs, the holding in the thighs or the calves. And then within the body, as part of the body, becoming aware of your breathing. Breathing in a simple, ordinary way. But perhaps on the exhale, for a few exhales, releasing, relaxing at the end of the exhale, so that it's a little bit longer. And so there's a little pause before you inhale. Very little pause. Just long enough so you feel the body's natural urge to breathe in. And allow for that urge to manifest as an in-breath. with the breathing. Just the breathing. How simple can you be aware of it? Perhaps a simplicity that allows a fuller experience of breathing, to have space in awareness. It's not crowded out by other concerns and things. And then as we sit here today, no matter what is happening for you as you sit and meditate, maybe there can be a refuge for you in the simplicity of awareness, the simplicity of just being aware, just mindful, taking a backward step so you're less involved and entangled. The simple recognition, this is how it is. Okay. A simplicity of awareness where nothing is a problem, just something to be aware of. whatever is happening to you. It's all right to limit yourself to simply knowing it, simply being aware, and taking a backward step to not be involved with it. Just be aware. And then as we come to the end of this sitting, the simplicity of awareness can also teach us about the simplicity of love. And sometimes when we are alone, like in meditation, it's kind of personal situation where you don't have to speak to someone or interact with someone, where it's a little bit safe. Sometimes this is where we can discover the simplicity of love, the simplicity of kindness or goodwill, a caring quality of the heart, maybe an appreciative quality, way in which our heart is delights and appreciates and values someone. That doesn't require us to say anything or do anything. The person doesn't have to even know it. And so it can be we can be freer to love, freer from complications. And to discover the simplicity of love, it can be a great lesson that supports us in how to care and love and have goodwill for people when we are together. So as we sit and end this sitting, perhaps you can touch into the simplest form of goodwill and well-wishing or appreciation of others. Maybe it's a wordless appreciation with just a warmth or a softness of the heart. Maybe it can feel quite lovely to allow for that softness, the warmth, the love, to be there without needing to do anything about it. It's just there, vibrating or glowing. And then to whatever degree you can in fact feel some simplicity of care, love, see if these words I speak resonate with that place. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free. And may that my love, my goodwill, my kindness, my care, wordlessly flow out from me, out into the world. And may whatever benefit that's come from this morning's meditation, this day's meditation, may it in fact be for the welfare and benefit of all beings everywhere. So, having covered the 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing, the Buddha's instructions in this practice continues into first explaining how mindfulness breathing comes along with uh, uh, the fulfillment, powerful word, fulfillment of the four foundations of mindfulness. And and uh, and as I said yesterday, each of the four parts, the four tetrads of the 16 steps, is directly connected to one of the four foundations of mindfulness. So if you do the first tetrad of just connecting to the breathing and feeling the breath body, relaxing the bodily formations, that to do that well, fully, to enter into that deeply, is also fulfills the first foundation of mindfulness, the mindfulness of the body, and so forth. What's interesting is then next the Buddha says that fulfilling the four foundations of mindfulness fulfills or brings about, evokes the 7 factors of awakening. And the way that it does that is that if you do fully the first tetrad, it fulfills the first foundation of mindfulness. The full fulfillment of the first foundation of mindfulness then awakens or brings along with it the 7 factors of awakening. And the 7 factors of awakening then lead to awakening. And so the implication here is that each of the tetrads, each of the 4 steps of anapanasati can be complete in itself. You don't have to go through the 16 steps one after the other. It's enough that your practice is just staying with any one of the 4. And I think for many people, just staying with the first step. And so the first 4 steps are not like elementary or remedial or something, and you want to get to the higher steps. It's and you're supposed to kind of guide yourself through them. The first 4 steps can take you all the way to awakening. Just doing that. After the Buddha died, there were commentaries, early commentaries, and they kind of went on a little bit the same way to say that if you just do the first tetrad, it also fulfills the other 12 steps. That somehow just kind of the simplicity of just being present for breathing and the body and relaxing the body, calming the body, and doing that fully brings about all the other benefits, all the other movements of practice. And to me, this has a lot to do with the simplicity of all this practice. That the simpler we can be, and the less entangled we are in trying and wanting, just being here in a very simple way, it's onward leading. It sets free it sets, the water begins flowing down the river, flowing down the mountainside. You have to put up big boulders and blockages to stop it, and you can do that, but it's a lot of work. But if you remove the obstacles, water will flow. So this practice of anapanasati, mindfulness breathing, is a practice of becoming simpler and simpler, in that all the obstacles we step away from. We release the obstacles, and then something unfolds and moves and deepens. And so the meditator doesn't have to be so concerned about that deepening, but go along for the ride. If we can really stay intimate and connected and trusting of this mindfulness of breathing, mindfulness of of being in the body, and letting the body relax and soften, and around this breathing we do, and not get caught up in other things, and just simpler and simpler, just breathing, focused, settled, steady, composed on the breathing. And the idea is not to force that, but to know that a lot of that has to do with letting go. It's just allowing yourself to become simpler and simpler. So that so then the Buddha says with the fulfillment of the first foundation of mindfulness, then that fulfills the first of the 7 factors of awakening, which is mindfulness itself. When mindfulness is fulfilled, and the language is very interesting. Language is more like, then it's natural, or what flows out of that, what arises out of that, as opposed to what we're supposed to do. So it continues this process of simplicity, where we're just getting out of the way, and something begins to bubble up and unfold, this miracle of the Dharma. So he says that when the mindfulness has become well developed, then what follows that is investigation. One looks more carefully with wisdom at what's happening. When if mindfulness is clarity, investigation is really seeing in more detail what is clear, what is happening. So just kind of a greater and greater clarity and investigation of discerning what's there. For the Buddha, the more we discern, the more we see clearly what's here, it gives rise to energy, it gives rise to engagement, it gives rise to interest. And this is good, partly because the more we can investigate, what we're investigating, what we're really discerning and seeing, if we're really mindful, is how the trail, the path that opens in front of us into where freedom is, what's wholesome, what's beneficial. And we follow the choices that are in the wholesome direction, and because we know what's unwholesome. We know that clinging and grasping and aversion doesn't really work. And so we choose not to go there. We don't stop having those feelings, but we don't get involved. We don't pick up. To the degree which there's choice, we choose what's wholesome. And for meditators, the wholesome thing can be as simple as just staying with the breathing. Being mindful of breathing is considered a phenomenally wholesome, healthy thing to do. And so then there's energy in that. There's enthusiasm for that. And so that arises. And not that you have to be enthusiastic or interested, but it just flows out of this practice as it deepens. As we have this interested engagement, then what flows out of that is joy and delight, happiness about this. What flows out of that is something deeper settles and relaxes, feels reassured, becomes calm, tranquil, a deeper tranquility or serenity. And that deeper serenity and tranquility leads to greater concentration or more settledness and more steadiness, more composure. And that deeper composure and settledness, concentration, then out of that flows equanimity, a deep non-reactivity of the mind. And equanimity is like the pinnacle of simplicity. That's where things are so simple, the awareness. We're just aware, and the awareness is not ruffled by any wanting and not wanting. So, until we get to the stage of equanimity, awareness is not really completely simple. So don't worry about it. Don't try to have perfection. But the movement is just be simple as you can. And so then we move through these 7 beautiful factors. That's kind of the miracle of practice, that this simple awareness, just staying in the simplicity of it, can lead to these beautiful qualities of mindfulness, deeper discernment or investigation, energy or engagement, effort, joy, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. And part of the value of this deep equanimity is that this simplicity, it's a radical simplicity, where we're getting closer and closer to where the mind is not for or against anything. It's just there, luminous, clear, present, fully here, without wants and aversions, without building a self or having it self-referential, like, it's a self-help project. there's almost like the self-concern, conceit, just falls away because things have gotten so simple and clear. And that equanimity that is that way, then is because it's not doing anything or wanting anything or trying to get anything. At some point, that awareness can discover a kind of a rest, a kind of a letting go, a kind of release, where any remnant, any kind of way of structure, personality structure, linguistic structure, any ways in which the mind is involved with things and thinking about things, and just releases, lets go, and there's an experience of freedom. That it's such a nature of this freedom that then people say, well, now I know what the practice is about. Oh, so this is what it's about. This level, this possibility of being free from any attachment, any clinging, any agitation, any contraction at all. Wow, this is possible. And it's then I would call it the ultimate fulfillment of simplicity. And it's a simplicity which, that rather than being boring or being like feel like we're missing out on the wonderful things of life, this is the wonderfulness. There's something of the peace and the clarity and the happiness and of freedom is just one of the greatest things in this universe. And so some people then to feel this is when then we really know this is what practice can do. This is what it's about. This is what simple, clear awareness is. And then it's said in the ancient world, and this is not meant to be discouraging. I hope it's encouraging. In the ancient kind of lore is that then this is when Dharma practice begins. The first real taste of freedom is because now we know what the practice is really about. We have no doubts about it anymore. Then, now I can start practicing. This is what the practice is. And there's this huge confidence that arises. And in the ancient language of the Buddha, then a person at that point is called a practitioner. So it's, of course we're practitioners before that, and wonderful practitioners, and a lot of benefit before this kind of freedom. But and that usually in English they translate the word sikha as a trainee. Now a person is ready to train. Now a person knows what the practice is about. So, but it all from this simplicity. They don't have to make it complicated, and even the very first step of Anapanasati, the commentaries say, is enough. Just stay there, be with that. That's enough to go all the way. You'll be taken, you'll be carried there if you do it sincerely and fully and regularly. And then the text goes on to one more teaching for tomorrow. And that's a teaching of what practice looks like, this Anapanasati, what it looks like after a person when a person has become a trainee, when a person has become a practitioner in the way I'm talking about. How do we practice after the first glimpse of awakening? So, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to being here with you again tomorrow.